Hello and welcome to TCR Express. I'm digital media editor Warren Frey. Journal of Commerce staff writer Russell Hixson is off this week. We've just started the second part of our Cracks in the Foundation series with a podcast episode last Friday. That was the first part of an interview with Trevor Botkin, who spoke to Russell about dealing with substance use while working in the construction industry. We'll have part 2 of that interview this Friday on the Construction Record podcast. We also released an article Tuesday about Remind's new Lone Hunter video, which points construction workers at a website where they can access mental health information and services. Remind is a collaboration between the BC Construction Safety Alliance and Work to Wellness Rehabilitation Limited. We're also releasing a series of videos starting this week featuring Angela Gismondi's interview with Rob Trymbulak about his decades of working in the construction industry, all while struggling with substance use. His story is quite emotional, and we've included an audio clip for that series at the end of the episode, so stay tuned for that. I'm also working on a story about crane safety, where I'll be talking to WorkSafe BC, and I'll be covering the BCCSA Construction Health and Safety Conference later this week, so expect to see stories from that event as well. Daily Commercial News staff writer Don Wall also has an article coming out later this week in the Cracks in the Foundation series about how apprentices are training to become sheet metal workers at Ottawa's Smart Local 47 Training Center, and they're learning not only the physical demands of the job, but also the mental strains of both the job and a construction career. And speaking of Don, he also attended the recent Ontario Construction Secretariat Conference in Niagara-on-the-Lake, and he reports that Build Force senior economist Bob Collins had good news and bad news for delegates attending his presentation on labor force issues on day 1 of the annual conference. The good news is that there looks to be a tremendous pipeline of projects, valued at over $100 billion, anticipated over the next half-decade in the province. The bad news is that a number of challenges, some related to the pandemic, could threaten the delivery of those projects. Threats include an inexplicable decline in the total size of the workforce from 2019 numbers, with some older workers and others apparently sitting on the sidelines as work resumes its pre-pandemic pace. The potential impact of mandatory vaccine requirements and supply chain challenges. Meanwhile, project costs are going up. Training hit a pause during the pandemic, causing a near-term carryover effect, and it seems likely that worker mobility will not be the answer to local worker shortages, as it often is. Quote, "We are caught in this vortex now of how do we meet these peak demands," Collins said, end quote. Besides Angela's work for the Cracks in the Foundation series, she also attended the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers conference last week. In a panel discussion, Build the Future of the Workplace After COVID-19, speakers discussed how all workers, especially women and equity-seeking groups, which were most impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, will be impacted as working arrangements after the pandemic transform and evolve. The focus was on how companies can ensure the transformation and the future workplace doesn't leave anyone behind. And as promised earlier, here's a clip of Angela speaking with Rob Trymbulak from the video series.
You were working on the Gordie Howe Bridge project in Windsor, Ontario. You've been in construction for pretty much your entire career. What impact has that had on your addiction and your substance abuse, over the years?
Pretty much made it easier for me to make excuses for my addiction. It was easy to find people who had some money, who had, maybe owned homes, cars, had families like me. And it just seemed like we were doing what everyone else was doing. Meanwhile, there were times I lost jobs, but we just call it you get laid off. Not too often you just get fired. You don't show up for 3 days because you're out acting out on in a party scene or addiction, and they lay you off. And especially in the first 10, 15 years of my career, there was so much work here in Windsor, and all you did was go call another contracting company and start a new job. So, it's not like I was homeless on the streets. Like, I didn't even know what addiction was really my entire life up until I ended an over-treatment center. But so it kind of, it fueled my addiction in a way. And it made it even more easy to make excuses. Not that things weren't piling up and circumstances weren't, progressing, negative consequences, like it says, were happening, but I could always come up with excuses. Like I said, just go get another job. And even in all of that, sometimes you'll find some people that are pretty high up the food chain that they'll get you jobs. I've been a supervisor early in my career because of my addiction, probably because of the way I liked, because of my lifestyle, which was like an everyday party at work, after work. There's people out there like that. And it wasn't until it got so overwhelming that I could see it, where I was unemployable.
Can you tell me, when you realized you needed treatment and when you actually, went and got it?
So basically, the drug choices I've had have escalated so much. I've been hiding it so much. The excuses all ran out, basically. My wife was no longer putting up with it. It was I've lost a couple. I lost a key supervisor role that I had for years. I was installing windmills all up through Ontario. I missed a couple days due to substance abuse and addiction. Even then, I wanted to try and fix it myself, which is another big characteristic of addiction. But really, so at the end of the day, I was kicked out of my house, living in hotel rooms, no longer had a job. And it was my wife and a couple good friends and my business agent from my union who got me to go into a detox center where I was only there a few hours, but because I registered there, became a public affirmation that I had a problem. And my BA called me there and told me that I was no longer employable. I would have to go to this treatment center called De Novo if I wanted to go back to work. So I was out of money, had no place to live. I only hung around with people that used the drugs I was using. So it had to get really, really bad for me.
That's it for this week's TCR Express. You can listen to us on Apple Music, Spotify, and Amazon Music, as well as the Daily Commercial News and the Journal of Commerce. And please do tune in on Friday for part 2 of Russell's interview with Trevor Botkin for the Construction Record podcast. Thanks for listening.